Welcome to the Wingmen Show. We are floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you two badass jet pilots, rumble. Welcome to the Wingmen Show. We're floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you two badass jet pilots, rumble. Welcome to the Wingmen Show. My name is Commander Drew Brown. My wingman, my friend, my main man is Dr. Paul Thompson. What's up, Brother Paul, today?
It's a good day. Good to see you. I'm glad to look at your shining, smiling face. We're going to have a good show today.
Well, a great show. You know how we started off? We always start off with a quote. Well, how about this one? You know, I believe a lot about being nice. Kindness is the only service that will stand the storm of life and will not wash out. Once again, kindness is the only service that will stand the storm of life and not wash out. You know who said that?
Yeah.
Abraham Lincoln. Now, I need to make my little point about Abe Lincoln. He didn't free the slaves to be nice to slaves. He freed the slaves so he could win the war. And I've always wanted to say that. And people need to know true history. Anyway, you knew that, Dr. P?
I've heard that recently, I guess about 20 years ago. Yeah. It's not
Well, good. You know, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say everything is, all our stories are not as romantic as we'd like them to be. Sometimes things are done for practicality, not not because of mercy necessarily,
or logic or truth, because history is his story, and history is only written by the winners. You know, they say if it bleeds, it leads. Well, the Wingman Show says that if it's good, it should. And so here's our good story. Mexico is about to elect its first woman president. The main opposition is the Broad Front for Mexico for Xochitl Galvez. She's an outspoken senator, and she's running against the Moreno party, Claudia Sheinbaum, which does not sound like a Mexican name. She's a Jewish Mexican that is actually mayor of Mexico City. And they are both running for president, Dr. Paul. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. You know, you brought that up a couple of days ago. I'd never heard of it, and I looked a little bit more into the background of Miss Sheinbaum. Again, that name, I'm not thinking someone in Mexico. I'm thinking more like somebody I had as a third grade teacher. But yeah, she's an interesting person in that her family emigrated. Both mother and father immigrated from Eastern Europe, actually, escaping the Holocaust. Settled in Mexico, just as a lot of Jewish peoples immigrated to different parts of the world, during World War II, even before World War II. But she's been there for a while, and she's actually a scientist. She's a physicist and an energy engineer, and has worked on big projects, and worked on a project with Al Gore, actually. And she got a PhD at, I believe it was at Stanford.
Women in Mexican politics, they just have a chief justice that's the Mexican Supreme Court. Chief Justice of the Mexican Supreme Court is a woman. And guess what, Dr. Paul? As far as women in politics, America is number 71. Mexico's number 5.
That's interesting. I would have thought it'd been just the opposite, but it's not.
All right, here we go. How about this one? You're talking about the world of science. This is freaking incredible. There was a paralyzed woman. Her brainstem had a stroke, and she was paralyzed. A 30-year-old woman was paralyzed, could not speak, could not do anything. These scientists implanted a paper-thin rectangle of 253 electrodes on her brain, on the speech part of her brain. They then hooked her up to a computer, and this computer actually spoke in an avatar in her own voice, because they recorded her own voice. So the avatar was actually talking in her own voice and making facial expressions. Is that the most incredible thing you have ever heard?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a combination of AI and machine learning. Because I wondered how were they able to do that? And they can get her to speak in her voice. Apparently, there was a recording of her speaking at her wedding many years earlier. So they used that pattern, and I think had her speak somewhere. Well, she couldn't speak the words, but the machine basically started to pick up her speech patterns and build its own vocabulary using phonemes, PHONEMES, which are little bits of speech. It's not, instead of like hello is like different parts. It would take her voice, her pattern of voice, and apply it to different words. So as she would say different words, the computer would simulate how they think she should speak based on that print they got from her wedding. Yeah, she can talk.
The way they're doing it now is that they hooked up a wire to her head, an actual port in her head. And what they're hoping is that they can start doing this wireless. But what trips me out also is that she's making her facial expressions that come with the words, which is incredible. The brain is an amazing, amazing organ.
Yeah, it's amazing. And to do this, I think they worked many months to get to this point. It wasn't a one and done. Like everybody was learning at the same time, the scientists and the machines, the computer itself.
That's major strides in scientific knowledge. Well, let's stick with the brain. You know, a lot of people always like to take naps. I didn't know this, Dr. Paul, but some people are genetically disposed to sleeping during the day. They are saying that people who do take naps, they actually have their brain increase in size. Because as you age, the brain gets smaller. Well, people who are taking naps, their brain is actually increasing. And that's an amazing thing. Then they also said that certain people are not genetically disposed to take naps. I'm not. If I take a nap during the day, Dr. Paul, I feel like hell when I wake up from the nap. I feel worse than when before I took the nap. What do you think, Doc?
I read that too. I'm not one of those either. I don't get tired during the daytime. One time I've ever taken a nap during the daytime, it might have been when I've been in the hospital. Other than that, I'm going the whole time. And I don't know too many people that take naps during the daytime, say, hey, yeah, I gotta go take a nap. I don't see much of that. Maybe it's our pace of life in the 21st century, the 20th century, 21st century. I haven't really ever seen a lot of people take naps in the middle of the daytime.
I have a sister that does it. She loves to take naps. Loves to take naps. Some people are genetically disposed to do that. So if you are tired during the day, take a nap because your brain will grow. How about that?
Okay, that could be. When I was working, that was kind of tough, flying in the middle of the night, I'd go to sleep, as soon as we got to the hotel in the morning. So again, that's, I don't know, maybe, our sleep cycle is so disrupted, so long in so many ways. A lot of times, I didn't know whether I was coming or going, regardless of what it said on the watch. So I'm not sure what pattern I would fit into.
Well, you remind me of somebody who takes naps because your brain is very big and you're very, very smart. Can we stick with the brain here? How about this one? A neurosurgeon in Australia. This woman came complaining of depression, complaining of couldn't sleep, complaining of a lot of disorders in her life. And they went to the doctor and they saw something on the brain. The surgeon actually was going to take a biopsy of the brain, put a hole in her skull, and reached in to get just a piece of the brain so they could do a biopsy because they were thinking it was cancer. Do you know that this doctor pulled out a 3-inch living worm? And she said everybody was freaked out about it. And when she pulled it out with her forceps, it was wiggling. This woman had a 3-inch worm inside her brain. What do you think about that, my friend Paul?
Wow. The first thing I think of, the first visual I have of that is the movie Alien. And the second one, Alien, Sigourney Weaver thing came out of her and chasing everybody. But that's amazing. What's more amazing is how did it get in there? Basically, it's thought that she ate some because she lived near a pond that had a lot of pythons. It's in Australia.
Uh-huh.
And apparently she used some of the grass in cooking. And the thought is that the feces of some of the pythons became part of her cooking, actually. And she got something from the grass, from the python into the grass, into her food supply. And this thing grew in her head.
Well, since we're talking about brains, since we're talking about worms, this one is the most incredible, Dr. P. Incredible. They just found a worm that was in permafrost from 46,000 years ago. And when they defrosted it, it was alive. It lived 46,000 years. And they said as soon as it got all back to life, it had babies. It's asexual, and it had 11 or 13 babies. They're studying the babies now because the original worm died. Please talk to me about a 46,000 year living object that was frozen that came back to life.
Yeah, they found that. I think they discovered it was in a lab in Cologne, Germany, when the thing came up. Again, another movie pops into my head, the Thing. That's an old movie. In the Antarctica, they discover this crash UFO, and there's this body in it. It's frozen. Then they thaw it out, and the thing becomes a monster, and it kind of destroys the station. James Arness, the actor, played the Thing. But who would have thought that? The Thing, I think this was like 5 years ago. So the Thing, the worm was a little bit over 46,000 years, but it kept moving. So who knows if there's something even older running around?
No doubt about it. You know, the longest one they had was 25 years. It was in frozen moss, and they had a nematode or a worm actually come back to life. But 46,000 years, that is way beyond anything I could ever imagine.
So are we getting too close to like a real Jurassic Park? Well, the dinosaurs have gone longer than that.
You know, with this technology, Dr. Paul, that's happening so fast, it's going to be incredible what happens in 10 years because technology is getting faster and faster and faster. So this is incredible. And this brings me to a Wingmen PSA. From the 11 facts in life, fact number 2, be happy, have fun, and be nice. Be happy, have fun, and be nice. Couple of things in there, Dr. Paul. My life is about being happy. Anything that doesn't bring me happiness, I move away from. I move away from because it's all about being happy and healthy and having a good, fun life. But the main thing I love about that one is to be nice. I believe that is the answer to world peace.
Yeah, I think so too. And again, it costs you nothing. Everybody can't live, big and bad and mean, and that's not a way to be. I mean, for a while, I was in an environment where that was kind of the standard, but a lot of times that's really kind of a defensive shield. It's not natural.
Well, everybody out there, thank you so much for listening to our podcast, especially frequent flyers out there. That's people who listen to us every week. We surely appreciate it. And if you can look behind us, we got some badass jets. Once again, I have fantasy MiGs behind me. What are you looking at there, Dr. Paul?
Behind me is a couple old Marine Corps F-4 Phantoms in the clear sky somewhere.
I used to think those were the baddest looking airplanes in the world at one point.
Yeah, I like the design of it. I really like it's my favorite airplane to look at.
Dr. Paul has a wingman, a couple of wingmans actually, a little celebrity wingman time today. Anybody who listens to us and watches us on YouTube, if you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and if you're hitting us up on Instagram, please write a little review or something. We really do appreciate it. We really appreciate that. And we have a newsletter called The Gouge. And in the Navy, the gouge is actual information, insider information that's legal that people give each other. So we're doing the gouge now. And so our newsletter will have the gouge. And in the newsletter also, we have something called a frequent flow line. And that's when one of you guys can ask us a question. And we have a frequent flow question today. And the question is, a man from Nashville, 45 male from Nashville, says he deserves a raise. How should he approach his manager? Dr. Paul, you have some advice on that first?
I assume hopefully you're doing a good job. It's not just in your imagination. Hopefully the manager agrees with it. But if you're coming up on an annual evaluation, maybe keep track of the things that you've done that were really good, exceptional. Perhaps you might compare yourself to other people in a similar position. If they're getting more, is it time for a longevity raise or performance bonus? What are other people doing the same jobs at other places receiving? How do you compare? Inflation affects everybody, so everybody could use a few extra bucks.
The way I would handle this is, first of all, I would have something written. I would actually have some written information about what I do, how I do it. I would also observe other people in the same jobs and what they're getting paid. So I would have facts and figures, not just being emotional. But when you stand up for yourself and you do deserve something, most of the times you'll get it. Most of the times you'll get it. And if you don't get it, maybe it's time to move on somewhere else. Don't you think?
Yeah, I agree. Maybe it's time to move on. Or again, you can do that by increasing skills, more education, more training. It's kind of the same thing. You say moving on and not just leaving, getting mad, but actually developing yourself. Or you're ready for maybe a next level or a higher level.
Well, I believe that if you do the work, you should get paid for it. And if people are not realizing your worth, then it's time to move on. And sometimes that's the best thing you can do, is move on to get to a better position. And sometimes you think it's not the right thing in the beginning, and you find out it was the best thing that could ever happen to you.
Yeah. I believe in training. You're 46. You're 46 years old. To me, you're still relatively young. You can go do something, get a little more training, and see what the market will bear for you.
That's true. Maybe you can find another skill that you really like. To me, Dr. Paul and I were very lucky to be pilots. So we worked flying jets all over the world. To us, that wasn't much work. That was fun. I remember when Keith, Dr. Paul, and myself, we flew to Paris for a weekend on a 777. How can you call that work? We spent the whole weekend in a fancy hotel and then flew the 777 back. What a great American dream that was, Dr. Paul.
That's true. I remember. In fact, I got a picture right behind me.
I'll show the picture actually for all you YouTubers out there. I'll show you a picture of all three of us. All right, Dr. Paul, I'm going to let you take this one. Talk to me how important breathing is, because with breathing exercises, you can actually lower your blood pressure. Dr. Paul, take it away.
Yeah, you can lower your blood pressure and basically kind of de-stress. In fact, I did a breathing exercise this morning. I typically do it when I wake up in the morning. You can do it anytime during the day. There are probably hundreds of techniques. There's one that I like. There's really two that I like. But it typically involves slow, steady, deep breathing. Slow, steady, deep breathing to kind of relax the body systems, the internal systems, and even your mental systems. Instead of being stressed and under pressure all the time like we all are in modern life, your body needs a break. You're under stress more than you realize, and a lot of that can be self-imposed. But to relax, you have to be really mindful and do that deliberately, which is almost counterintuitive from the time we get up in the morning. You need to slow down. If you can find 5 minutes out of the day, or even less, 5 minutes out of the day to actually do some slow, deep breathing. You can do it while you're driving your car. You don't have to suffocate yourself, but you can reduce your heart rate, increase your concentration, and really increase your focus. But relax body systems that you're not even aware of you have. Our autonomic system kind of controls our internal functioning and things we don't have to think about, like blinking your eyes and taking just normal breaths. You're not thinking that. You got a little computer inside of you that's working all that. Well, by incorporating deep breathing, mindful, slow breathing, you're helping that autonomic nervous system become more efficient. So you basically help yourself, and you feel better too. Will help your health. Can't hurt you. I recommend it highly. I do something called it's called the Wim Hof method. WIMHOFF. That's the guy's name. Unusual name. You can see him all over YouTube. I think it's beneficial.
Yes, and in our newsletter, we're going to send out a couple of links. There's something called iBreath or BreathWorks, and there's actually a test that Dr. Paul and I took that we're going to have a link on our newsletter that you'll be able to take too about breathing. But you notice when things go bad, like when we were learning how to fly, actually, when there was a problem in the airplane, our instructors always told us, hold on, just take a breath, take a minute. When things happen in your life, people always say, just take a breath, take a minute. Well, actually, breathing, if you do it correctly and you start doing some of these exercises, it actually affects your sympathetic nervous system. And that means that's that stress response. That's, when people hyperventilate, they breathe real fast. When they're in mindful meditation, their breathing slows down. And they're saying that breathwork exercises actually can lower your blood pressure just as much as medicine. And there are a couple of breathing techniques that you can use. Dr. Paul uses one. I just use one that you breathe in for 5 seconds, you hold it for 4, and you breathe out for 7 seconds. Whatever you do, if you do that regularly every day, your whole nervous system will slow down. You'll stop putting out that cortisol, and that's that fight or flight response. Because when you get real scared, that breath quickens up. Well, most of the time, there's not a lion running after you. So your breath doesn't really need to. It's in your mind. So if I were you, I would start doing breath work. I'm going to start doing that actually right away, Doc.
Yeah, well worth it. There's something called tactical breathing, and a lot of people in the military, law enforcement, or whatever will do that. Similar to what you said, the instructors, they say basically slow down. Sharpshooters do this. Take a breath in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, then release for 4 seconds to release, to relax themselves before they pull the trigger.
That's true. Yeah. And that's our Gouge for this week. Insider information, learn how to breathe better. It will help your life. Okay, Dr. Paul, can you believe there's a 13-year-old soccer player named Davion Kimbrough that just turned pro? 13 years old, professional soccer player, and is going to get paid for it. That has to be the most amazing thing I've heard. They're getting younger and younger.
Yeah, he's out of I think he's out of Sacramento, California. And that's one. How do you work school with that? I guess you can, because you got these child actors, who've been children forever, and they hire these high-priced tutors to teach them while they're growing up. And some of them are very smart. I guess it works. But yeah, Mr. Kimbrough, I guess he'll be getting paid. I don't know what Major League Soccer pays in the U.S. pays the kids, but he must be.
I know what Saudi Arabia pays, $200 million a year.
That's right. He may be over there at the age of 15. If you like that, Tony Parker, the former of the San Antonio Spurs, and Luka Doncic, who were pros as teenagers also.
Luka Doncic was MVP of the European League at 16.
Yeah.
How about Tony Parker? He played for the San Antonio Spurs.
Yeah, he's in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, he started as he was a pro in France. I think he was 15 or so.
Wow, amazing! They're getting younger and younger.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Paul, there was a terrible tragedy in Hawaii, in Maui, and there was a terrible fire that killed a lot of people. But out of the fire comes heroes. And I'd like you to give us our Wingmen story this week with our heroes this week.
Okay, well, here are two heroes. They're very well known, but to give a little backstory, in Maui, Hawaii, in the town of Lahaina, there was a very terrible fire that probably most of the viewers are familiar with that destroyed most of the town and is affecting actually the entire island of Maui. Well, the residents there, about 12,000 of them, are totally devastated. They worked tourist jobs, worked in hotels, they've lost their homes. And there are two other residents of Maui, whether they're part-time or full-time, they've pitched in to help. And those two residents are Oprah Winfrey, and The Rock, known as Dwayne The Rock Johnson, both big time people in the world of Hollywood. And they volunteered to use some of their own funds to provide $1,200 to the townspeople. I don't know for how long, $1,200 a month. It was almost like a COVID payment to a family. I don't know if it's to every individual or to a family, but if you look at a group of 12,000 or so people and $1,200 a month, 12,700 people, basically talking about $15 million a year they're being pledged. They put in about $10 million
of their own money.
Yeah, and they have a general fund called the People's Fund. I guess like The Rock had the People's Elbow, as I recall. I used to watch that stuff, but it's the People's Fund, and it's a very, very good thing for them to do, because Maui is really suffering, because they initially said they wanted people to stay away, they wanted people to get away. Now they need people there because tourism has fallen 70%, and there are parts of the island that were not affected. But since everyone's staying away, businesses have kind of shuttered. People are being laid off. The townspeople, how can they make any money? How can the rest of the island make money? So they're trying to get people back there. Anyway, this whole thing has created a cascade of devastating effects throughout the whole island. So they're trying to get the island to come back. So they want people to come back to Maui, come back and help rebuild, and something for the people, because nobody wants those who've been burned out to be displaced with people who may come in and try to buy up the land, everything real cheap, and rebuild it. Because things after fires, typically wooden things, the forest typically regrows itself. Things typically come back. But there are people who have been there for generations that don't want to go. They don't want to just be forced to leave. So Oprah and The Rock have done a very, very good thing by trying to help out a lot of people in need.
So do you smell what The Rock is cooking? I do, and it's something real good. And don't feel bad for The Rock or Oprah. My daddy was in The Color Purple, and he had one line, and for the rest of our lives, my life, my children's life, my grandchildren's life, they will pay us. And daddy gets like a check for $100 every time they show the movie. What do you think Oprah gets if my father gets $100 for one line in the movie? So I don't feel bad for them financially, but I think it's wonderful that they put in their own money to help these people out. And that's kind of what the Wingmen Show is. Those are two wingmen who are celebrities who took time out to help others. Well, Dr. Paul, anything that you and our viewers think is beautiful, anything that you and our viewers think is meaningful, and anything that you and our viewers, anything that makes you happy, may you have that today and forever. I pray for peace, Dr. Paul.
I pray for peace too. And again, we thank all those who listen, like, and share our message. Please subscribe and click the notification button, particularly if you're watching on YouTube, so you'll get an alert every time we put out a new show. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again, Dr. Paul Thompson, my friend. Thank you for your love, your time, and that's something that we won't ever get back. I want to thank all the listeners too. Thank you so much for doing the show, Dr. Paul. We're jamming.
Well, thank you, Mr. Drew, for inviting me on. Always good to talk to you. And ladies and gentlemen, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast or any of the podcasts. If you're looking at YouTube,
They say smash the like button. Don't smash it. Just press it gently and refer to use as a link to all your friends. You can also look at us on our website, wingmenshow.com, WINGMEN show, SHOW.com altogether, wingmenshow.com. And we hope to see you in the future. Thanks again, Mr. Drew.
Oh, you're welcome. And we're still floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you badass jet pilots, rumble. May there be peace on earth, and goodwill towards all men and women.